everybody be quiet and listen, because we're going to have a good lesson today about the common. Sit down and be quiet. I'm Ulna McWhorter, Archive Committee Chair, and on behalf of the Archive Committee and Wood County Historical Commission, I would like to welcome you to our program about the Wood County Common Schools. These are the schools that provided education to some of you, your parents, your grandparents. I would like to recognize several groups of people who have contributed to this project. There were 30 former students of these common schools who were interviewed to provide information that can be added to our research. If you are one of these students who was interviewed, would you please stand up or raise your hand? Let's see who you are. Okay, there's a lot of people here. That's great. You added so much to our local research. Okay, now, if you were a student that attended these schools and you weren't interviewed, would you please stand up? If you attended a common school, I know there's a lot of you in here. Okay, good. I also want to recognize a very special person that helped us in our research, and this is Ronnie Vance. Several years ago, Ronnie, would you please stand? He really helped us. Several years ago, he handed me a packet of papers of his research about the Wood County Common Schools that he had done individually because he was interested in this project. This was long before the Archive Committee started our project. So I put it in my files, and then in 2021, Archive Committee decided that we needed to do this Common School project. And I remembered that Ronnie had given me this information. So I was able to find it, and we have used it. One thing especially was what we call the black map. This gave the location of all the Wood County schools in 1935. And now it's back on the table in the back of the room if you want to look at it after this program is over. It shows every place where each school was. Many people have helped us in different ways. They have either donated materials, they've given of their time, they have given physical labor to improve our facilities. And if you are one of these, please stand. I know one is here today. If you did something for us, would you please stand in that area? Gordon Schultz, I know that he did. He did some painting in our building, and we really appreciated it. And I know that some of you have donated things, so we thank you for this. The research for this project was conducted by the Archive Committee of the Wood County Historical Commission. These persons are, and I'm going to call your name, and please stand as I call your name. Sue Ham, there she is, right over there, and that is a picture of the Webster School that she's standing behind. There's Sue over there on that side of the room, and her sister painted that, and it's a beautiful painting. Rita O'Hara, where's Rita? Okay, there she is. And she has done so many things. She has made all the pictures that we have hanging on the wall in our building. She has done a lot of the work for this. She's done the handout that I'm going to talk about later. Joyce Williams, Okay, there's Joyce. She's done a lot. She's helped with locating the things. She got the map. Rosa Davis is out at the registration. And Jim Phillips. And Josh Pogue. He's at the camera. Now that's the archive committee. That's just one group out of the Wood County Historical Commission. But these are the ones that did the research project. I haven't left anyone out, have I? Okay. In our program today, Jim Phillips will tell about the history of these schools. Then Sheree Mize will tell about her great-grandfather, Mr. J.U. Searcy, who was the first Wood County school superintendent. I will tell about some of my family who were teachers. Matthew Greer will talk about the Rosenwald schools. There will be some the videos of the interviews of the Wood County students will be shown. And now, not everybody will be on the video today because of time constraints. But everybody will be on the videos that will be on YouTube. So if you're not on today, you can turn on your TV and turn on YouTube and watch your interview. Am I telling that correctly, Josh? Okay. Then there's memorabilia up here that you can see at the end of this program. And we have some door prizes that are going to be given during the program. So we have a great program, and we will begin. And Jim, are you ready?
We are so glad that y'all are here today. This has been such a fun adventure. And I'm telling you, this rabbit hole has not ended yet. Some people thought maybe today was a culmination, but the archive committee has not decided that because there's new information and other things. And we've got to figure out a way to permanently preserve this chapter of Wood County. As we drove here today, we've noticed that Wood County is changing quickly. And our rural past may end quicker than we realize. So it's important to us that we preserve this chapter when life in Wood County centered around a little school, a little church, and a farm. So the Texas legislature passed a law in 1884 that authorized the county commissioners to create school districts. Texas had tried to educate people, and it was hit or miss. And so in 1884, they passed a law. So in late May of that year, our county commissioners met for 4 days and earned $12 apiece to set up these school districts. There were 46 original school districts. Some of them lasted a long time, some of them did not. As far as we can tell, all of the school districts in Wood County started as a common school except for Mineola. So this original list was Quitman, Lone Star, Myrtle Springs, Forest Hill, Cartwright, Caney, Pleasant Hill, Rock Hill, Forest Home, Winnsboro, Collegiate Springs, Spring Hill, Smyrna, Cold Springs, Shady Grove, Center Point, Pleasant Grove, Lloyd, which was called Coke because of that community, Common Ridge, Mount Pisgah, Liberty, Sand Springs, Fletcher, Pleasant Divide, Friendship, Lone Pine, Alba, Salem, Webster, Persimmon Grove, Cottonwood, Macedonia, Concord, New Hope, Dias, Mount Enterprise, Quitman, Cedar Tree, Robinson's Chapel, Muddy Creek, Mount Zion, Tranquil, Center, Hawkins, District number 48, and Shiloh. And so the county began from there. Some of those records don't show where exactly the school was. It was likely some farmer said you can use this corner or this piece of property. Later on, you can find deeds of where those schools were. For a long time, they would allow you to petition to change your school district based on where you live, so that if you were adjacent to another school district, and then that became chaotic, so they started charging people. If you're going to want to do this, then you're going to have to pay for these boundaries to be redrawn, so that kind of ended that. We have a list from 1913 that is over 70 schools. And from what we've been able to figure, throughout this chapter, there were over 100 of these schools. Not all at the same time, because there were consolidations and closures, but there were over 100. In the 20s, Julius Rosenwald, who was the CEO of Sears, creates a foundation to build schools for African American students in the South. And there were 8 Rosenwald schools in Wood County. That would be McMillan, Reinhardt, Lloyd, Webster, Muddy Creek, Hawkins, Falk, and Winsboro. We have located pictures of all of those except for Winsboro. We've even located the plans, because they were typically a 1-teacher or 2-teacher classroom. And so it's just beginning to unfold, although there are some common themes. I was able to be part of the interviews of many of the people that were interviewed, and we're not through with that process, by the way. And so asking what a person's father's occupation is, I'm not sure that there were many other answers besides farmer. The heart of the community was this little school. As Wood County developed this system, and Mr. Searcy was the first county superintendent in 1905, he began to oversee, and the county and the government began to see this was really a heart of a community where they could try to help people's lives become better. So they brought in, through the years, the agricultural department would show films and help people with their agricultural methods. Home demonstration agents would teach people how to can and methods of preservation. Even during World War II, people would register for those ration stamp books through those schools to be distributed. There were pie suppers, carnivals, musical events, plays, even chapel. Some of you may remember Mr. and Mrs. Oley, and they became community centers. New Hope even organized some assistant air raid wardens, so that if there were enemy planes over New Hope, I suppose. But World War II began to change our country as we shifted from a largely agricultural, rural society to an urban society. From 1940 to 1950, Wood County lost over 3,000 people in population as people moved to cities for better economic opportunities, and these schools began to close. By 1949-50 school year, there were only 12 of those schools left. They carried on for a while, and these 12 were Lone Grove, Cartwright, Collegiate, Stout, Crow, Lloyd, Common Ridge, Pleasant Grove, Concord, New Hope, Cana, and Haynesville. And then by the 60s, as the population in those areas began to change, the student population began to decline. So there were 4 left: New Hope, Cartwright, Lone Grove, and Lloyd. Coke was actually the last school to close after the 64-65 school year. There are some schoolhouses that are still standing in our county. They're used for other things, and that would be Lone Pine, Pleasant Grove, Falk, Lloyd, Cartwright, and Lone Grove. So we're going to work on a map of those so that people will have an opportunity if they want to at least go look and see these schools. The interesting thing is, in 1935, there were 5,938 of these common school districts in the state of Texas. It provided an education and so much more for those communities. We're glad you're here today because you're a connection to our rural past that we want to save. And thank you for coming. At the end, we're going to try to maybe do some group photos of people, if you would like to do that as part of our record. Thank you for coming.
I know a lot of you in this room. I guess I better use. I know a lot of you in this room, but for those that do not know me, I'm Sheree Mize, and my parents are Sam and Joe White, and this is my brother, Shannon White, and I have two sons in education. Michael, my oldest son, is a junior high principal at Grant Saline, and formerly the high school principal at Alba Golden, and my youngest son, Cody, is the superintendent at Mineola ISD. Joyce Williams had asked us to speak because J.U. Searcy, who was the first superintendent of schools in Wood County, is our great-grandfather, and he was the father of our maternal grandmother, Maggie Searcy Blaylock.
Right there.
Yeah. This is his picture. Okay, so when Joyce asked us to speak, we didn't know a whole lot about him, just because he'd been gone for so long. And my grandmother, Maggie Blaylock, she was kind of shy and timid, and she didn't tell us a whole lot about him. But when I got to looking and I did the research, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how he came to Wood County and what he did as he was here. J.U. Searcy, James, was born in Alabama on January the 3rd, 1862, and he came to Texas with his parents, M.J. and Mahala Pinkerton Searcy, in his childhood. The Searcy family consisted of 4 boys and 2 girls, and they lived in Panola, Rusk, and Van Zant counties before coming to Wood County. J.U. Searcy married the first time Margaret Maggie Catherine Searcy, and she passed away at the age of 25 years on January the 18th, 1893. And there were 3 children born to J.U. Searcy and Maggie Searcy. A young daughter, Lily, passed away in 1892, 1 year before her mother at the age of 7 years old. And there were 2 sons, Arthur, who was 7 when his mom passed away, and another one, Marvin, was 8 when his mother passed away. And Arthur died at the age of 32 in 1918, and Marvin died at the age of 57 in 1944. We know very little about Arthur and Marvin Searcy. They would have been my grandmother's half-brothers, and we don't have any information on their descendants. But J.U. Searcy married the second time Mary Oliver Ollie Ship Searcy, who was from the Golden community, and there were 3 daughters that were born to this marriage: Jimmy Searcy Vickers, Maggie Searcy Blaylock, who is our maternal grandmother, and Mary Kay Kirby is here, and that is her mother. And the youngest daughter was Truby Searcy Parrish. Miss Ona Wood noted in her book about Wood County that J.U. Searcy was one of Wood County's most zealous educators, and following his elementary education, he attended the Summer Hill select school, a prep school, and junior college at Ulna in Smith County. And this school was established in 1876 by Professor A.W. Orr and was attended by the children of some of the most prominent families in Texas. J.U. Searcy later, he attended A&M College at College Station, and the book on the end here is his book, and he has written his name there, the one that he had at A&M. J.U. Searcy is said to have taught his first school at Bellefonte in Wood County, Texas, and this is the school that my grandmother spoke of most often. And this school was located near the Calvary Baptist Church. J.U. Searcy also taught in Quitman before 1900 when the school building was in the north part of town, and he became principal of the Quitman School after it was relocated in the south side of town. In 1905, J.U. Searcy became the first superintendent of Wood County Schools, and he served in this capacity for 11 years. At some point after this time, J.U. Searcy moved his family to South Texas, and his oldest daughter, Jimmy Searcy, taught at Sadville. This was near Corpus. We don't know when he came back to Wood County, but at some point he did. And my great aunt, Jimmy Searcy Vickers, remained in South Texas, and she lived in Taft, near Corpus, until her death in 1958 at the age of 63. And her husband, Ralph Vickers, was a farmer there. My grandmother, Maggie, married Jack Blaylock, and their farm was located west of Quitman on Highway 182. And their 3 children, Joe Blaylock, our mother, Buddy Blaylock, and Mary Kate Blaylock Kirby, attended school in Quitman. Truby, the youngest daughter, she graduated from Mineola High School in 1928 and attended college in commerce. And she also taught for a short time. Truby did not have any children, and she gave my mother her 1928 high school class ring that I have here today from Mineola. And she also, Truby had given us, and my mother had given it to me, this is a ring that J.U. Searcy gave Truby when she graduated from Mineola High School in 1928. Truby, she married Dick Parrish, and he worked for Mobile Oil, and they lived in the Gladewater, White Oak area until his retirement, and they moved to Mineola in the mid-60s, where they were members of First Baptist Church. My grandmother had told us when she finished school that her father, J.U. Searcy, gave her a piano. And let's see, I remember that my grandmother said that she was not a very good student, and that her father was really hard on her. In a special edition of the Wood County Democrat, published August 6, 1908, a lengthy article written by J.U. Searcy was printed stressing the importance of education to the political, religious, and social institutions of the county. It was said that he gave 44 years of his life to education. J.U. Searcy lived with his youngest daughter, Truby, after Ollie had passed away, and she had kept his bookcase, a lot of his books, this large picture. This was his walking cane that was given to him when he retired.
By the Quitman Teachers Auxiliary.
Does it have a year on it?
1909.
1909, okay, I guess, okay. The bookcase with a lot of the books, my nephew, Brian White, and his wife Stephanie had this in their home near the Alba Golden School where they live. J.U. Searcy passed away in 1937 at the age of 75, and Ollie Shipp Cersei passed away in 1929 at the age of 54, and they are buried at Sand Springs Cemetery in Mineola. Maybe about a year ago, it might not have been quite that long, Ulna McWhorter had given me a copy of a letter that our great-grandfather, J.U. Cersei, had written to her grandfather, Judge Ben Cathy. And it was written a year before he passed away, and it was when he lived in Sinton, Texas, near Corpus. And this was in March the 1st, 1936. And I've asked my youngest son, Cody, to read this letter, and I think it says a lot about who he was.
This letter is to Judge Ben F. Cathy, Quitman, Texas. It says, "My dear Judge, I'm not able physically or mentally to express my sincere sympathy for you and your family in the loss of your companion and their mother. Permit me to say that Miss Reinhardt helped conduct the second school I taught in Wood County, and Miss Susie assisted me, I think, in the third. She was young and charming then, and everyone loved her. I'm so glad to say that she lived in a way that she added to her lovely character to the end of life's journey. But Jesus loved her best and died that she might live with him when her mission was finished. No doubt, he said, 'Well done, and good and faithful servant. Your mother's finished her work on earth by raising a family of boys to noble young manhood. Must cease from your labors now and rest with me in a house that's not made with hands, eternal in the heavens.' Jesus informed Martha that those living who believed in him would never die. Miss Susie is not dead. We know her influence will continue here, and we are taught that God is love, and those that love him can never die. We grieve at her going, but on the other shore, there are those who will bid her welcome and rejoice at her coming to her heavenly home, where there is no sorrow, sickness, pain, or partings. If I could say something that would comfort, I would gladly say now, I wish you and yours well, and may heaven bless you all. Your old friend, J.U. Cersei."
I was a teacher at Lone Grove and Lloyd Coke in the Wood County Common School System in the early 60s. When I chose teaching as a career, I was not the first one in my family to do so. Several in my family had already done that. My family could be described as a family of teachers. They taught in several of the Wood County Common Schools. My husband, Bill McWhorter, was the principal and teacher at Cartwright for 7 years until it consolidated with Quitman. I've seen some of his students here. My mother, Lillian Cathy, taught at Mount Enterprise, Belfont, and Alba. She was called Miss Lillian. Are there any people here that went to school to my mother? Raise your hand. Okay, I see Doug Ritchie. That's always, that's a wonderful thing to hear and see. My father, Horace Cathy, was a teacher at Concord, White Oak, and Reinhardt. My grandmother, Susie Reinhardt Cathy, the one that Cody just read, the letter that was addressed to my grandfather because she had died, Miss Susie. She taught at Lone Star, Cana, Belfont, and Reinhardt. My great-grandmother, Mary Elizabeth Reinhardt, taught at Belfont and Myrtle Springs, which was renamed Reinhardt in her honor. Now, I have an incredible story to tell you about my great-grandmother. She came to Texas to establish a private school in Mineola. and she came from Maine during the Civil War. She had this private school in Mineola. She met my great-grandfather, Lawson Reinhardt, and they married. Their home was located not too far from my home, 2 miles west from the courthouse square in Quitman. She outlived my great-grandfather, and died in 1904. Her house burned down about 1920. So there has been nothing there but pasture. No house was put back, just pasture. This year I met a man, Jerry Tenney. Is he here today? Okay, I see him. Jerry Tenney, I met him. He has a hobby of metal detecting for artifacts. I had heard stories about treasures being found with this method and had always been curious about the Reinhardt homestead. What might be found on this old home site that had been there since 1858? Well, there were family stories about Civil War, gold having been buried there. Well, I thought maybe he might find some of that gold. I asked him to check it out. He had been working about a week, and he didn't know anything about my history of having school teachers in the family. He had been working there, and he called me and he said, "Were there any school teachers who lived there?" He had found a school bell. A school bell. And it was very deep in the ground, covered with dirt. The wood handle was gone. The clapper was gone. But the bell was there, brass bell, just in excellent condition, considered it'd been buried about 100 years. It only had to be cleaned off. He and his friend added a new handle and a new clapper, and here it is today. I used it to open this meeting. And it's probably the first time it's been used in 100 years. This was a very special find for me. It was more so than any gold that could have been found. If it could talk, what stories it could tell. And then Mr. Tenney is over there, and I am grateful to him for finding that bell. And let's see. We can have another door prize that's on the schedule. So Rita, are you ready to? Okay.
42.
Shannon.
Jean Shannon. And we have these books for sale outside also. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now we have the next speaker is going to be Mr. Matthew Greer, and he's going to talk about the Rosenwald schools.
Good afternoon, and I will be assisted by my big sister.
The boss.
We attended the Rosenwald School that was in Falk.
Put your microphone closer to your mouth.
Thanks, Rab. We attended the Rosenwald School that was in Falk. And when I was in the 4th grade, that school closed. So I only had a chance to go there for 4 years. She was 2 years ahead of me. My sister Ruby there was 2 years behind me. And that guy there, Johnny Miller, he was in the same class with Ruby, 2 years behind. There's my cousin Arthur here, and I don't remember him going to school there because I think he was out by the time that I got there. I might have been in the 1st or 2nd grade school when he finished there, but I don't remember it. My experience at the Falk School, at the time I didn't know it, but it set the stage for my life. Because that was the place that I did my first play. And those of you that know me know that I've been in show business, you know, most of my life. But it also was my first traumatic experience, because when that school closed and I had to come to Mineola, I thought that I would lose my mind. We didn't want to come up here. We had to ride the bus to Falk School. At the time, we were living out at Howard, and everybody on this side of the Lake Fork Bridge had to attend Mineola School, and everybody on the other side went to Hawkins School. And before that, if you lived outside the city limits of Mineola, you went to school in Falk. So there were people that lived just on the other side of Mineola General Hospital that had to go to school in Falk because they were outside the city limits. There were people that lived around New Hope that had to go to school in Falk because they were outside the city limits. But I really didn't want to come to school in Mineola. And my dad and mom didn't want us to come. Oh, by the way, my mom and her 5 sisters also attended Falk School. So my dad and mom kept us in the Falk School, and the bus driver would come up and pick us up every day and take us to school at Falk. At the same time, the bus driver from Mineola would come out, and he would be parked there to pick us up to bring us to Mineola, but we would always get on the Falk bus. So that September, we were supposed to come to school here. So along around October, the principal of Mineola School, the superintendent, and the chief of police came to our house and told my dad that he was going to have to send us to school in Mineola. And like I said, that was my first traumatic experience. But otherwise, everything was good for me. I'll let my sister talk some.
We spent the rest of that school year in Falk because my dad refused to let us come. And it was a traumatic experience because my mom had grown up in the Falk community, and all of our cousins was there. We were my mom and dad was the only one that moved outside. They moved to Howard. So we knew everybody, you know, all the cousins and people that weren't cousins, and it was very, very traumatic. So when we, the next year, you know, we had to come. And that was traumatic also because we didn't, you know, we knew the people that we had gone to school with before because they had been there a whole year and they had their friends. And every day, my brother was in a fight. Every single day. So.
Actually, it wasn't a fight. I was getting beat down.
But we survived. and it was a good experience. And we all graduated high school there and everything. And one thing that happened, I guess it was a good thing I did come to Mineola, because that was where I met my husband. I was in the 6th grade and he was in the 6th grade. And we married, and in December, we'll be married 60 years. So. So here's a few mementos here. This is a picture from Falk School, but this is before we had started school, because this is from 1943. And I know some of these people because they're older. This is a picture of the school bus with the school bus driver. This is a picture of the school, the original school, but I think it's had a little work done on it. These people, I don't know who they are, but I guess they're playing basketball or doing something.
Hold it up, please, so that you see. Okay.
This I'm really proud of because my mom was a basketball player, and she and 3 of her sisters are on this team. And this is her school sweater, and then this, we kind of been made this, but this is, we're really proud of because they were the only high school team they were the only high school team to defeat Prairie View A&M College. Wow. And this is the certificate that she got when they defeated that college, and she was like so proud of it. And then even after we were all born, and I was in high school, we were all in high school, I guess, they had a fundraiser for McFarland High School to raise funds, and the basketball team, they had a lady, they organized a little basketball team to play the high school kids. And my mother and 2 of her sisters were able to play on that team. And I don't know whether this is my mother or whether this is one of the teachers, one of the former teachers. And these were a little beat up, but this is her elementary school certificate when she graduated from elementary school into high school. And this is her and this is her high school diploma that we were able to hold on to. And my sister is here, Ruby, and my brother, and Arthur is our cousin. He went to school there. And Arthur is the oldest grandkid still living. We just celebrated his 90th birthday in October. And now he's coming up on his 91st. And my cousins are here, Rose Davis from Hawkins, and Bessie Peoples from Hawkins. And as I say, and I have a niece here, Cassandra. Some of you might know Sandra. She's all over town and involved in everything. And then my sister-in-law, Denise, that's my brother's wife. And we also have Johnny Miller. He resides in Michigan now, but we moved away and they moved away. He moved to Michigan and we moved to New Jersey. My brother moved to California, but we all wound up back here. And Anita is Johnny's wife from Michigan, but now she's one of us. So we're very, very pleased and very happy to be here, and I just hope we can keep this going. Thank you.
My sister wanted me to give you the names of my mother's sisters. They were Hawkins. They were the Hawkins girls. All of them were basketball players. The oldest was Callie. There was Leanna, Bernice, Cleo, Ophelia, and Loretta. There were 6 of them. They were all basketball players. Didn't pass down to me.
Thank you.
Now this is the front of the school. All the upper grades were on the left. All the lower grades were on the right. There were a hall.
So if you were looking at the school, upper grades were on the east side of the building, lower grades were on the
Correct.
west side of the building.
That's correct, and there was a hall all the way from the back of that school to the front, clear across the front, and went clear to the back. And there was classrooms on the outer side of that hall. And through the 6th grade on the west side, and then the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th were on the west side. Auditorium was in the middle.
How did you get to school each day?
Walked through the woods,
Well, how far was it?
probably about a mile and a half or 2 miles, probably about 2 miles.
Mostly the first year we walked 2 miles. After that, we had a bus route. The district bought a bus, one of those short buses, it had 6 seats on the side. So from then, they picked us up.
How did you get to school each day?
Sometimes we rode a bus.
Not in the mornings, Dad and Mom.
Well, usually they took us, but
Yeah, I didn't ride the bus, but once in
Yeah.
a while.
right.
Well, the road in front of the school was US Highway 80. It was paved. Now, the country roads were not paved. They were gravel roads. And some of them, when it rained, you better not go that way. You're never going to get up the hill. That's where that's where your vehicle's going to be, stuck in the mud.
School bus.
And where were you living at the time that the bus picked you up?
Forward.
Okay.
Farmer.
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 He was a cattle rancher.
Yeah, they missed school to pick cotton.
Okay.
Picking cotton. I'll never forget it.
And I well remember in October, we had to pull out of school and pick cotton because it was ready and you didn't have farm hands except your own. And that also meant new shoes and some warmer clothes for winter.
Mr. McWhorter, 7th and 8th grade.
I will say with Mrs. White, we had prayer before we started school. We had the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. We sang Texas, Our Texas, and Holy, 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 the religious song. And we many times had America the Beautiful. And she would have different students come and stand by her as we sang. and very, very good lady.
In the first, second, third, fourth, we was taught by Miss Ruth Knowles at the time, and then she married a Sutton, and her name's Miss Ruth Sutton. Then we had Miss White. I don't know what her given name was. The top, Mildred. That's what I was thinking. Mildred White. She taught the other grades. Then at one time we had a principal named Mr. Clark. I don't know what his given name was. And then at the last 3 years of school I was up here, it was Mr. A.Dale Browning.
And he was the
principal and the teacher.
Corrine and Bill Pittman were my teachers here at Coke.
Do you remember if there were any special programs or parties at Christmas?
We always had a play. Plays were very important. We'd have sometime a play in November around Thanksgiving, and a Christmas play, and then an end of school play. And all the kids were in it, and we all had long parts to remember, but that was something that they did every year.
Was there a graduation program?
Yes, but it alternated between this school and Coke and Lone Grove. They all graduated together.
Well, every Friday during the ball season, we'd go to either to Lone Grove School, Pleasant Grove, or Coke and play ball. And he'd load us up in his camper and carry us the whole room that he taught with him.
And that was your school day?
Yeah, that was our school day.
Okay, that's great learning right there.
The parents would have their pots, you know, a couple of pots, and make big stew in them pots.
They'd bring their wash pots?
Yeah.
It was a program, and it was about nursery rhymes. And my brother was old King Cole. And all he did was sit and count his money. And the part I got, I didn't like, because I got the part as the maid, and there was a part that said, King was in his counting house, counting all his money.
Counting out his money.
The queen was in the garden. The queen was the girl that he got off the bus with. And the maid was in the garden, hanging out the clothes. Along came a blackbird and nipped off her nose. And I had to have red lipstick all over my nose and the play. I didn't like that. But that was one I remember. But we did have Christmas plays, and they would show a film sometime.
Yeah,
at night.
every week.
Yeah, at night sometimes they would show film.
And I see this must be the auditorium.
This is the auditorium.
Do you have memories from the auditorium?
Well, absolutely. First time on the stage entertaining the crowd when I was 6 years old and enjoying every second of it. Except when they tried to get me to sing by myself. Didn't mind singing with a group. Don't like to be the only one singing. And then that end of the year stew we talked about, it'd be 200 or 300 people here. Cook all day, congressman came. It was quite an event. I remember one time in particular, we had a box supper, pie supper technically. I'm not sure it was raising money for something. I don't remember where the money was going, but Johnny McWhorter, one of my friends, and I decided that we would buy Miss Jocelyn Taylor's pecan pie because it had a really good reputation. We had maybe $1 between us, and lots of pies were only selling for 50 cents. Prize boxes wrapped, and they were selling for 50 cents. We started bidding on the pie, and we realized there was a group of girls bidding against us, and people began to bring us money, and the price went up. For whatever reason, we bought the pie that day for $5.28. And then somebody told us that we were supposed to offer her the first serving, and that crushed us. We wanted the entire thing for ourselves. We did get cleaned out a guy's watermelon patch one time. We all had a big black diamond melon apiece, and came up here and put them on the porch and ate the heart out of them. And the big cemetery meeting was the next morning, and all those watermelon rinds were sitting out there. And my dad said, "You boys do that?"
I think that sometimes there would be a county graduation where all the schools would go together and have their graduation, because there wouldn't be enough for one small school. They might have 6 children in the 8th grade, and so the schools would combine for this graduation and maybe rotate having it at the different school buildings. And all schools at that time had auditoriums. It was a very important part of their building. The Lone Grove had an auditorium, and Cartwright had an auditorium. And I know Pleasant Grove, that had consolidated before I started teaching out at Coke, but most of them had auditoriums.
Probably. This side of the school was kind of slanting down, and when it iced up, the kids had them scooting down there, sliding down with the ice.
Well, did you slide down?
I scooted down.
Oh, you scooted down, okay.
Had all 3, a swing set, seesaw, and a merry-go-round.
What did you do at recess?
Just go out there and play on the swings and recess. Or seesaw.
Baseball, football, but the football wasn't no good to me.
Well, we used to have a basketball court up here just this side of the church on the inside the fence. And we had a merry-go-round out here, right outside this window. And we had some kind of swings that they were dangerous. They're made out of steel. You put your arm in them, and you run and jump and you swung in the air. And lots of times kids would let them go, and it was dangerous.
What were y'all doing that day?
Probably playing ball somewhere.
Well, what kind of ball was it?
Volleyball.
Volleyball.
We had what you called a county meet. At the end, in late summer, we'd have softball games. And our equipment was 1 true ball and a bat, no gloves.
Outhouse, about 150 yards away. They needed moving. They needed blowing up.
And when we first started school over here, we had outbuildings, outside restrooms.
Okay.
We didn't have indoor. No.
Okay.
It was heated, but we didn't have no cooling.
Okay.
I didn't think we had the fans other than do it with our own hands.
Seemed like it was wood.
So you had a wood stove?
And the boys cut the wood, and seemed like, I believe we had a heater.
Eventually, the well was on the other side of the cemetery, and I remember when they brought the water fountain in, it set out here and had 4 spigots on it with handles. And we drank it, it came directly out of the well. And every once in a while, the big boys would get permission to actually go out to the well and drink out of the water hose out there.
Did you bring a lunch?
Sometimes I did.
What would you bring?
Might be a biscuit with some bacon or something like that.
Something left over from breakfast?
Yeah. And sometimes I had light bread and sometimes I didn't.
You ever eat in the cafeteria?
Yes. It was good food too. Had some of the best cookies you ever ate.
Did you have a cafeteria?
Well, I don't know what you'd call it. You go get a lunch tray and you get your lunch and you go back to your room and eat. You didn't have a cafeteria, you had a kitchen that you went in and got your food.
Did you take your tray back to the kitchen?
Yes, when you got through.
So, was it an organized type deal, or did the teacher just let you come and go as you finished?
Yeah.
No, we had government surplus. I don't know. A truck would pull up at the back of the building there, and they would unload cases of stuff, canned stuff, fruit. We had a piece of fruit just about every day at recess, twice a day. Apples, bananas, oranges, you know. It was really good.
I guess a sandwich, biscuit and sausage, a lot of times. Not a sandwich. Biscuits.
What did you bring it in? What?
Had a little bucket.
Was it a syrup bucket?
Yeah, we had little special buckets.
Oh, okay.
What did you do?
Well, you eat at your desk or you carry it outside. And
Oh, we had.
Whatever mother fixed.
Whatever she fixed. We always had good sandwiches. Might would have a tea cake in there.
Yeah. Cookies.
Being kind to everyone and you respected your teacher.
Respected the building. You didn't mess it up.
And all the class, for my part, and I think Kathy would say the same, all the classmates were extremely bonded because we had some difficult times. We all had to either work in the fields or we had things that were hard on us, so we all understood and shared a common bond.
I think the work ethics that I got out of it, I tell you, it's a lot of young people nowadays just don't seem like they have a good work ethic. They don't, I don't know, honest, I don't know.
I think that was a good foundation. That's where we got our start. And I can still remember the times of what I learned here.
Yeah. I think it was just a loving family atmosphere.
Right.
Because when we were going to school here, most of the people we had known all the people all our lives.
I like for them to remember that in the day that there was a school, that activities revolved around the school and the church in that community, and the people of the community did come together when there was a need and band together. And I wished it was still that way today, that people could see the importance of an education, that teachers could be the role models that they were back then, and invest in the students forever, and that parents would back the teachers in their effort to educate those children.
I remember people that I know, I get tired of hearing me say that I can remember going to church in a horse and buggy and wagon and team, you know. It was Gilbreth, First Baptist.
That it was a community school, that it was the center of the community, and I believe it was pretty good educationally. As I said, we all graduated from high school. 2 of us were honor students up there.
This chalkboard that was very important too, with a teacher in a common school. These students would go to the board and they would do math. They would perform math problems, and a teacher could check, could just look and see if they knew what they were doing. You could diagram sentences. You could call it. I guess you could have spelling lessons with them. So it was important. We didn't have copy machines that you were always running off papers. So that's why it was an important thing to have.
Well, I think the main thing, I'll always remember the teachers that I had, and they had a great deal of influence on my life. Mr. Pittman was not only my 4th through the 8th grade teacher, but he was also my Sunday school teacher on Sunday. So I had a great deal of respect for he and Miss Pittman and for what they taught us. This school kids were a very close-knit group, and they kept it that way.
Okay.
It would be great to put I'll tell you what we did.
We really appreciate it. He did a wonderful job. Okay. Now, there's one thing that I wanted to be sure you saw. And Sandra, you want to tell about this?
This is a boy paddle. See the tape on it? And this one was for girls. And they belong to Travis and Blanche Garrett from Alba.
Okay, we're almost finished, but I have some things to tell you. Be sure when you leave that you get one of these handouts. Rita did these handouts, and it's a work of art. It has, when you open it up, it has the history of the Wood County schools, similar to what Jim gave today. Then you open it. It has some pictures. It has a list of all these schools that you heard about. It has a picture of J.U. Searcy and Mrs. Ola Hyde, the last county school superintendent. It's some pictures of the Macedonia school. And then this program today. So it is a really nice souvenir, and Rita had really worked hard on this, and we need to give her a big hand. She's going to be there at the door to give you those. Are you going to do that? Okay, Jim.
Also, this Thursday we're going to be at our Wood County Historical Building, which is next to Jan's. There's an open spot, and then ours is that next building. We're going to be open from 10 to 3. If anyone had any pictures that you would like to scan to donate for our use, and that helps preserve those images from this time. There are people we know that are here today that have not been interviewed, but we're not through interviewing. So we'll be looking forward to meeting some of you.
Okay, we also, let me remind you that we have these history books for sale. Two different books. One, the Wood County history from 1850 to 1900. This is a bargain for your home library. It gives you all the information you would need to know during those years. So you can get them in the lobby, $20 each. Be sure to look at the displays, especially the black map that shows all the Wood County schools in 1935. Now we have refreshments. We want you to enjoy them. You may visit with some of your friends, and you are dismissed.